An obscure section of the California Vehicle Code says that the state Supreme Court Chief Justice can request CHP to provide officers to act as bodyguards for any current or former member of the State Court of Appeals or the California Supreme Court. Our initial investigation showed how the current Chief Justice is indeed asking for and using that service, and it costs taxpayers millions of dollars every year. Well, tonight, News 10 investigative reporter Tom Jensen has new video, expense reports, and a new source that all suggest the expensive security is not always for business. Sometimes it takes the CHP bodyguards to exotic locations.
It looks like a luxury taxi in front of me, but a high-paid CHP officer is behind the wheel, not a cab driver. And California Supreme Court Chief Justice Tani Cantil-Sakauye is sitting right next to him.
She's in the passenger seat.
It was early Thursday afternoon when we followed the car right to the Chief Justice's neighborhood, along with her alert and armed CHP driver.
He's totally checking me out.
Fortunately, my photographer lives in the gated community, or we could have been accused of trespassing.
I thought you weren't using these for personal, to go home and to and from San Francisco.
This is private property. Why are you in here?
But he lives in here.
A fair question, considering the Chief Justice criticized the governor's budget in January, saying she needs another $250 million.
We have 51 courthouses that have closed.
Through her spokesperson, the Chief Justice repeatedly refused to answer any questions about how she and the other justices use the service. We talked to a former appeals court justice after an audit hearing on the Chief Justice's office in February, and he told us accusations the officers are used for personal trips are ridiculous.
It's just complete nonsense, totally inaccurate.
But an alliance of more than 500 California Superior Court judges who face courtroom closures and other cutbacks are critical of how the officers are used and the multi-million-dollar expenses.
As far as the Chief Justice is concerned, last I checked, it was a pretty safe road from Sacramento to San Francisco. There weren't many brigands on the highway anymore.
Expense reports from the CHP show over a 4-month period last year, the Chief Justice and her driver made just one trip per month from Sacramento to San Francisco. But a source with knowledge of her travels says a CHP officer picks her up often. And according to the state Supreme Court calendar, most of the court's business is in San Francisco. And there is much more in those reports. In September 2012, 2 CHP judicial protection officers escorted her and other justices to her home state of Hawaii, where she made stops in Oahu, Kauai, and Maui. In October, another officer stayed 3 nights in Monterey for a Chief Justice event. There was a 2-day overnight trip to Pebble Beach, and she was back in Hawaii in November 2012, where yet another officer accompanied her to Kona and the Mauna Kea Beach Resort.
Aloha and mahalo.
2 months later, in January 2013, the Chief Justice and another CHP officer headed off to San Juan, Puerto Rico for 5 days, where they stayed at the exclusive Ritz-Carlton and paid $340 per night for each room. Since 2009, taxpayers have dished out more than $4 million a year for judicial protection.
Is this really needed for protection? If so, it should be done. If it's just because of prestige and convenience, I don't see any reason why the CHP should be operating an armed taxi service for justices.
That California Vehicle Code we talked about earlier, it does not require this service. It only says that the officers will be made available, quote, upon the request of the Chief Justice. And the current Chief Justice continues to request the service and use it, even for rides home to Sacramento and Hawaii.